So this is the app that we want to build. So today I will teach you how to build this app for all of you, for your region, and publish it into your account. So the app is called Surface Water Explorer. We have a map, we have a panel here, we have one drop-down button. This will load all the admin 2 regions in your selected state. So you can choose whichever state you want. You can choose a particular admin 2 region. It'll display the surface water map of one of the years on your map here. So this is the surface water in that year. It also will display the area of surface water in that admin 2 region. And you can choose a different region. It's going to zoom to that and display the surface water area and the map for that region. So we know how to do all of this using code, but we'll put all of this into an app so you can publish it. You can choose whichever admin 2 region shows up here for your particular region. So let's start building this app. This app has one map, one panel. So we'll start by creating those. We're starting to work on script 2A now. Here we have some basic code. Let's see what happens when I run this. So the code here, we are defining one panel. So this is a UI.panel. We have all the UI mod widgets here. So if you scroll down in your docs tab, you expand UI, and these are all the UI widgets you have in Earth Engine. So you have a button, chart, etc. Panel is a top level container. So whatever you want to create, you generally create a panel and put your buttons and drop downs inside of that. So we create a panel, we say the width is 300 pixel. We create a title, UI.label, saying this is a Surface Water Explorer, give some font size. We can say, take this title, which is a label, add it to the main panel, and then UI.root.add main panel. The default app UI has one map. So when you say I have one map, add the panel will go and sit on the right-hand side. So when I run this, you can see I have this app, which is one map and one panel. When I publish this, everything below the fold will go live. The users will not see the code. You can also tweak this. You can say, I want a panel of 400 pixel wide. You can see I have a bigger panel. So again, all this are configurable based on what you need. Let's add some other widgets. You can see in our app, we need this drop-down menu. So let's learn how to create a drop-down menu in our app. So I'm going to create a drop-down. And this drop-downs are called UI.select. So I'm going to create one empty one, and I'll say main panel.add drop-down. You can see we have the drop-down here. It's empty, nothing happens because we've not added anything to it. Let's see how we can configure this. We can expand the UI.select documentation, and you can see this, we can create a drop-down with different parameters. You can give an items parameter, which is the list of options to be added to the drop-down. So let's give this a list. We'll say A, B, and C. And see, now we have the drop-down. We have these 3 options. Now I select this, nothing happens. Because when I select something, I'm not programmed what happens when I select something. If I want to program something, I need to give this value of this parameter called onChange. OnChange parameter takes a function that will be called when user selects a particular value of the function. So let's define that. So we'll say drop-down changed. So this is a function I've defined. This will be called when user selects a value, and we'll just say print, you selected this value. Simple function will be called when the user selects a function, and we just print what the user selected. And now we can say drop-down onChange. So we're going to say onChange, you call this function. So now, whenever I select something different, you can see this function is called and it's printing that value. If I select something different, it is selecting the value. So now you can get an idea of how to program your app. You put the stuff you want in your drop-down list. When the user selects it, you get that as in your function. And then once you have that value, you can write your normal Earth Engine code, display a map, or compute something. I'll pause here and see if there are any questions. Items, these are the items. And you can also define it when you create it. So there's a parameter called onChange, and you can define it right there. you can also define it later on. So once you create an object, you can say, set this function as the dropdown, as a on change function. So you can code it as a parameter. And now when I change it, you can see it's working the same way. Many times when creating the objects, you say, I first create the object, add it to my app, and I'll define what happens little later on. So you have the option of both, where you can define an on-change function when you create it, or you can first create it and then set the function. So both ways are there. I prefer this one because it's easier to just create an empty placeholder, put it on the app, and then once your app is running, you can kind of say, go and update this this particular dropdown, or go and update this label. So you can use this one. Let's add something useful. So instead of creating a dropdown with ABC, I want to use the admin names of a particular state. So I'm going to bring in the GAL data. So we'll get our admin2 layer. So we have the level 2 admin data that we were working with, and we want to add the admin names of a particular state. So we'll say, wherever the admin1 name is this state, I want to add the names of all the admin2 region within that. So let me just print this feature collection. This has got all admin2 regions in this particular state in India. There are 27 features. This one is this admin name. I want to put all those admin names inside of this dropdown. So I can select and go and zoom to this particular admin name. Every feature has this property ADM2 name containing the admin2 name. There's this really useful function in Earth Engine where you have a collection of images or collection of features, and you want to extract a list of all property values. You can use this function called aggregate array. So you can use this aggregate array and say, give me the list of all admin2 names from this particular collection. So if I use this, you can see I just got a list of all the value of the property. And this is very useful. So now I can put all these names into this drop-down box. And when the user selects it, I can display that admin2 region in the map. So I will create this as a list. I'll say var admin2 names equal to this. Perfect. And now I can say, instead of this ABC in my drop-down menu, I need to use admin2 names. Problem. Can anybody tell me why did we get an error? Why didn't it work? So you can't give a list, an object, which is an Earth Engine list. It doesn't know. It says, I don't know what is this. I can't work with this. Give me a JavaScript list, and then I can put this in the items. So how do we convert this EE list into a JavaScript list? Well, we need to use evaluate. So let's say admin2 names dot evaluate. We need to write a callback function. Easiest, you can just write a function right there. So we can just define the callback function right here. We can say, when admin2 names has been evaluated, call this function, which will take admin2 names list and does something. So what do we do? Well, when you get a list, you can then add it to the dropdown. So I'm going to define all of this inside of my evaluate. So now we'll get the list. It'll wait for the evaluation to be done. Once it's done, it'll create this object with this client-side list as items. So you can see it's waiting, and it's done. And now we get our list here. And this is why it's important to learn about client-side versus server-side. Still, all of your processing, all of your computation will use Earth Engine API. Only at the end, when you want to display them into an app, as a list, as a value, as a label, you need to convert them into client-side object using the evaluate function. Right, so we have the way to kind of control what happens when you select something. So you can see, as soon as you select, you have this value in your function. So now I have my function drop-down changed, and I can do something with the value here. So once a user selects this, I can say, go and find that data and do something with it. So let me just change this here. We can say, I will take whatever value you have. Let's say, I'll just say So this is the standard Earth Engine code. So now what happens is if I select a particular value, it is going to call this function and is going to use this value to do some processing. Let me just define the GSW yearly dataset. We've not defined it yet. We're going to use the global surface water history dataset to get the map of that. So you can see what happened when I selected this. The function was called with the name. We say, okay, we know what the user selected. We select that feature from the feature collection, extract the geometry, filter the GSW data, extract the water, and display that on the map. Right. So all of this is now the same code, but you are able to incorporate the user's input through this drop-down selector. You can run this, it'll go and do this thing for another district. And this is the crux of the app where you figured out how to do the drop-down, take the input, and then do your processing using that. Yeah, this is a question that comes up quite often. The apps, when you're running this kind of apps, these apps are anonymous. That means they don't require a login. So you can have an app where you can run without logging into your Gmail account, etc. And also we don't want all the users to be Earth Engine users. And that means they cannot really run export with a drive or another account. That means the export functions are not available in apps because you don't know who the user is. The user may not have right permissions, etc. So export is not available. Instead of that, in the app, if you want to allow some kind of download, there is this function called get download URL. It works on an image or a feature collection. So you can say, I want to download this resulting image. So you can say this water 2020 dot get download URL, and it'll display URL, which you can then display and click, user clicks, they'll download the data. The limit for this is 32 megabytes. So if your data that you're allowing people to download is more than 32 megabytes, it will not work. And again, the reason is because you are working in a browser client side, you cannot have a lot of data download coming through. So that's a current limitation. If you are working with other Earth Engine users, you can build an app UI, but share the script which has an export task, and they can go and click the task and run that. But that only works with the Earth Engine users. You can explain the exercise.